Travelling round the world can take you to some of the most beautiful and remote spots on this glorious planet of ours, but some are a little more dangerous than others. We have 7 of the deadliest to show you right now.
Right now we are in Sarawak in Borneo, but 2 years ago when Liz started passage planning our journey towards Japan, she came across these little atolls off the west coast of the Philippines in the South China Sea. She'd never heard of the Spratlys or the Paracel Islands, but the satellite imagery showed intense jewels in deep blue water surrounded by coral reefs and beaches, similar to the Maldives and Anambas archipelagos. We knew of no other cruisers who'd been there, but they looked very exciting.
Oh, I was so excited. Remember when I showed them to you, I said, my God, we've got to go here. It looks amazing. Anyway, a little more digging told me the reason why nobody goes there, and that's basically because these particular islands are in dispute with China, Taiwan, Vietnam, the Philippines and Malaysia, all claiming sovereignty. And then you throw into the mix the fact that the US Navy is in there patrolling the waters to keep them clear for navigational international waters rights. You've got a big problem.
Still, at least with the lack of human presence, nature should be flourishing, turtles should be nesting, there should be an abundance of fish and coral. That is, providing of course the navies don't go around blowing each other up and dumping their crap in the waters. So, Spratlys and Paracel Islands are no-go. No. So have you got any alternatives?
Well, I did think that the Anambas are in the South China Sea. They look very similar when you look at them on the satellite images. So if you can't go to these islands, go to the Anambas. There's also the islands north of Palawan, Coron and places like that. They're going to be really similar because some of those are very close to the Spratlys. So that would be the alternative.
Ever since we announced our plans to sail to Japan, many of you got in touch and said, what about the radiation leaks coming from Fukushima? Well, that does depend on which news sources you tend to read and believe in the internet, but rest assured, Fukushima is not part of our sailing plan.
Yes, Miyakojima, on the other hand, does not suffer from radiation poisoning. Instead, Mount Ayama, which dominates the island, erupted regularly from 2000 to 2004. It's a pretty place with around 3,000 people living there now. It even has a tourist office. Okay, so it has an active volcano, but there are lots of volcanoes on Japan's 6,800 plus islands, and inevitably we'll be sailing near some of them.
But what makes Miyakojima really special is that residents are advised to carry gas masks with them at all times because the volcano constantly leaks poisonous gases. Respiratory problems persist, and if the levels of sulfur rise too much, then sirens will sound off across the island and tell you to pop on your mask. So not somewhere we're particularly interested in going. Any alternatives?
Well, there is an island called Miyakojima, subtle difference there in the spelling, and it's renowned for its beautiful coral reefs. And just so happens it's between Ishikage and Okinawa, which is right on the route that we plan to take over there. With more than 4,000 of the deadliest snake in the world resident here on Ilha de Cameda Grande, apologies for pronunciation, it's also known as Snake Island, and it lies just off the coast of Brazil.
Yeah, now the venom of the golden lancehead viper, also known as Bothrops insularis, is so dangerous that if you get bitten by one, you're dead within an hour.
Blimey. Now, I quite like snakes. I find them really compelling, and we have seen quite a few in our travels, but 4,000 of the blighters on one island, no thanks very much. Even if we wanted to go there, we couldn't because the Brazilian government has prohibited any visitors from setting foot there. Occasionally scientists are given permission to study them on the island.
Rather them than me. Okay, so we can't go to Snake Island off Brazil. Any alternatives, Liz?
Well, pretty much every island in Thailand that we've been to has a snake on it, and in Langkawi we actually saw a cobra, didn't we?
We did. But if you're looking for alternatives around the same area of Brazil, that whole coastline is populated with lots of little islands which you can visit. A couple which stand out. One is Ilha Bela in the state of Sao Paulo, and the other one a little bit further up at 150 nautical miles away is Ilha Grande.
Heard Island Volcano. Okay, it is another volcano, that's true, but we like volcanoes, as everybody knows if they watch us. Anchoring inside the caldera of Krakatoa was a moment that we will neither of us ever forget. But it's not just a volcano, it's also the tallest mountain in Australian-owned territory, excluding Antarctica. And it's called Big Ben.
Lying approximately 2/3 of the way between Madagascar and Antarctica, the island is one of the most remote spots in the world and is a 2-week sail in any direction to any landmass. So why is it so dangerous?
Well, it's constantly spewing lava and glacier flows into the water around it. It's blanketed in ice. The weather on the island is notoriously terrible, with hurricane-force winds and low temperatures.
So if being in one of the most dangerous, most difficult places to get to in the world doesn't put you off, the Australian authorities will, because you are not allowed there unless you're a scientist. So, any alternatives?
Well, had to think about this, and if really cold, bleak, desolate places are your thing, then I suggest the Shetland Islands, lying very north from Scotland's mainland. They're almost closer, I think, to Norway than they are Scotland. They are really remote. There's lots of completely uninhabited parts of the Shetland Islands, and they also do a very nice drop of whiskey, which you can have by the fireside.
Perfect. By the way, if you find this video interesting or fun or even educational, then don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Yemen has been a no-go country since civil war broke out in 2015, but it's been a dangerous place to go way before that. In fact, the FCO have been advising British tourists and travellers not to go to Yemen since 2011.
In fact, this is what the Foreign and Commonwealth Office says on their website today. The FCO advise against all travel to Yemen. This includes the mainland and all islands. If you're in Yemen, you should leave immediately. There are no evacuation procedures in place. Terrorists are very likely to try to carry out attacks in Yemen. There is a very high threat of kidnap and unlawful detention from militia groups, armed tribes, criminals and terrorists such as Al-Qaeda and Daesh.
So you may wonder why anyone would want to go there anyway. Well, back when we went in 2010, before the FCO put those warnings out, it was actually part of our route down through the Red Sea and into the Arabian Sea. And the Gulf of Aden and the port of Aden have been a place where every boat stops off to provision.
Yeah, it's a massive maritime history, just amazing. And not only that, we loved it. We absolutely, it's up here as one of our favourite places we've ever been. Aden, this is, in Yemen. And we met one of the nicest people that we have met in 16 years.
Yep.
Salim. Wonder how he is now.
We just don't know, do we? So, okay, so Aden, Yemen, it's off the map, I'm afraid. So what are the alternatives?
Well, the Middle East obviously is quite difficult at the moment as we speak, but one of the favourite places that we've also been, this is on land, was Jordan. And you can, I believe, there are a couple of places where you can take your boat into Jordan, and I have heard that the Royal Jordanian Yacht Club is quite the place to be.
Oh, la-di-da. But if you are travelling through there, I think people now go to Djibouti instead as an alternative to Yemen. Don't forget there's the Omani coast next to Yemen, which has beautiful beaches. But whilst we're talking about no-go places in this area, we should give a special mention to the Saudi Arabian coast, up the Red Sea. I mean, that's almost 1,000 miles of coastline no one is allowed to go to.
Yeah, no chance. No chance of going there unless you want to be shot at.
Lying west of the Andaman Islands, North Sentinel Island is off limits to anyone with any sense, as John Allen Chow, a 27-year-old from the US, found out in 2018 when they killed him with arrows as he stepped onto their beach.
Numbering between 50 and 150, nobody really knows. The endangered Sentinelese have lived there for around 60,000 years and are protected by the Indian government. They choose to live in isolation from the world and have successfully resisted anthropologists, authorities and tourists. And to be honest, who can blame them?
But it's not just North Sentinel Island which is off limits. Unless you are an Indian national, you cannot visit the Nicobar Islands either, which are patrolled by the Indian Navy.
Okay, so where can you go then?
Well, the most obvious alternative, of course, are the Andamans.
Yes. But you have to get through all that Indian bureaucracy and tedium to get a visa to go there, and there are only certain places you can actually stay. So I've got another alternative.
Oh yeah, go on then.
Yeah, the other alternative is where we went, which is the islands that run down the west coast of Sumatra, the Mentawis and those above and those below, which will be very similar to the other islands north of them. It's all the same archipelago, and they are some of the best places, again, that we've ever seen in the world. So pull our way all the way through the Mentawis to Pulau Enggano. Go there instead.
When we sailed through the Gulf of Aden in 2010, piracy was at its height, and in fact we recorded some of these over the VHF. We heard some attacks on the VHF, and you can hear those in our podcast series, which you can find on our website. Piracy around that area is still prevalent, so we would still advise no one to sail around the coast of Somalia.
Yes, in fact this is what the FCO says on its website. There is a high threat of maritime crime in the territorial and international waters of Somalia, and all sailing yachts under their own passage should remain out of the designated high-risk area or face the risk of being hijacked and held hostage for ransom.
But the Northeast African and East African coastline is still one of our favourite places that we have sailed to. It's barely touched by tourism, especially after coming south of Egypt. The coral is in pristine condition, the fish life is flourishing. So what are the alternatives instead to Somalia?
Yeah, well, you can't go to Somalia. Some people are going to Djibouti, but we would suggest Eritrea, because Eritrea was right up there. And there's a particular island off the coast called Sadler Island, which we were allowed to anchor at, and that had the most pristine shores I have ever seen anywhere in the world.
So as you can see from our short list, there are many places in the world that are too dangerous to sail, be it for political reasons, environmental reasons, natural reasons. Are there any places actually you would love to go to that are too dangerous to sail?
Yeah, that you can't go to. We'd like to know actually, because this can't be the definitive list. There has to be other places out there. What would be really good is to hear from you if you've actually been to visit one of these places.
Let us know in the comments below.